Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor as the executive director of VICII, the Vermont Institute of Community International Involvement. I'm very happy to have you here. Peace needs people to talk to each other, people-to-people connections. With the actual current context, political context, it was very important to remind people that Vermont and Burlington is the only, if not, I think the first, if not the only city in the U.S. that has a tripartite connection, sister cityhood with Arad, Bethlehem, and then people don't know about it. So this is how we had that idea to create that summit, which maybe will become, next year and the years to come, a gathering, an official gathering that will be endorsed by the city and that will bring people from across the planet with whom we have connection, with whom we can create these bridges toward a better world. So I won't be long. One of the artisans of this Détente From Below connections with people around the world is Peter Clavel, former mayor of Burlington. So without any further ado, I would like Peter to come for his keynote speech. He will, as I said in the agenda, he will deliver a speech that will underscore the historical significance of the Sister City movement and its impact on Burlington. So please welcome to this podium, Peter Clavel.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
It's not quite going to be a keynote, but I'm going to say a few words that will put things in perspective. Some of you were involved in the campaign that led to the election of Bernie Sanders. I was not. I was living in Winooski at the time, but shortly after Bernie was elected, I crossed the river, moved to Burlington, and began to work in his administration, initially as a volunteer. At that time, as Steve Goodkind and others will attest, the Board of Aldermen, now called the City Council, refused to approve his mayoral appointees. So much of the work being done, including the preparation of the city's budget, was being done by volunteers. But I went on to serve as Bernie's personnel director for a brief period of time. There was a vacancy, and it was one of the few positions that he had the opportunity to fill because of the vacancy. I then went on to serve as the director of the Community and Economic Development Office for about 7 years. And that was an office that was created in 1983. And then when Bernie left the mayor's office in 1989, one of us had to get elected mayor or we'd all be unemployed. So I drew the short straw. I ran for mayor in 1989. One of my opponents running with the Green Party was Sandy Baird. I also had a Democratic opponent. I ran as an independent. I was elected in 1989. I went on to serve as mayor of the city of Burlington for 7 terms. Leaving office on my own accord in 2006. I did have one brief break, what I call the voter-inspired sabbatical in 1993 and 1995. But I came back after that break and ran for office and was elected 5 times after losing that election in 1993. I say this as throughout my, we have some folks coming. Come right in.
Sorry.
How's it going?
Sorry for being late.
That's okay.
A lot of traffic.
Throughout my political life, I've been a practitioner of what I call citizen diplomacy. So I'm just going to say a few words about what that has meant to me. And for me, citizen diplomacy is an idea that suggests that we not only have a right, but we have a responsibility to help shape U.S. foreign relations through person-to-person interactions with citizens from other countries. And so for me, citizen diplomacy, I'll use that word. Sometimes it comes under the broader auspices of public diplomacy, but the Sister City programs are certainly, in Burlington's life, a major element, a major component of citizen diplomacy. And it involves people-to-people exchanges, it builds empathy, it builds mutual respect, and it results in a shared commitment to build a better world. I'm proud to be a citizen today in a city that has today. Welcome, Madam Mayor.
Hello.
Nice to have you
Nice to
with
see
us.
you.
Yeah. But I'm proud to be a citizen of a city that today, and for my life in the city, going back 43 years, has had a municipal foreign policy. And I want to advocate that we continue to have a municipal foreign policy. And it should be, in my opinion, a foreign policy that's informed by direct relationships with communities around the world through the Sister City programs. So I think that the Sister City programs today, at a time when many at the national arena are arguing for isolationism, at a time when we have strife in far too many places in the world, I think that Sister City programs and citizen diplomacy is more important than ever. And I appreciate the work that VICII has done in terms of calling this summit today, bringing together folks from the various Sister City programs, and hopefully rejuvenate the movement. And I think, frankly, it's in trouble. I think many of the long-term Sister City programs are dormant. But I think there's also a recognition of the value of Sister City programs. And I think part of that recognition is that we now have a new Sister City, which Ali and others will talk about, in Senegal, as well as a new Sister City in Ukraine. So when you can't have this discussion without also remembering Bernie's contributions over the years. And I think it's important to recall that Bernie's time as mayor of the city of Burlington, people often forget this. I'm not going to get too political, but I want to make this point. His time as mayor, with the exception of 4 months, overlapped the time of Ronald Reagan as president. Yeah. Imagine that. So I think one of the reasons that the Sister City programs arose was that we had to make the decision: are we content to allow the Reagan administration to determine foreign policy, or would we, as one community, attempt to create our own foreign policy, which at times was at odds with the national foreign policy, and would we attempt to forge our own diplomatic relations? Yes, at a grassroots level, but nevertheless important. So think about that. And the first Sister City program was created in 1984 with Puerto Cabezas, Nicaragua, Bilwi. And this was created at a time when our federal government was supporting the Contras. And Burlington said, we disagree with that, but we don't just want to make policy statements, we want to get to know the people of Nicaragua on a person-to-person basis. So we forged that relationship in 1984. And it wasn't just talk. You know, we sent, in 1986, 500 tons of humanitarian aid to the indigenous people, the Mosquito Indian people of this remote town on the North Atlantic coast. 500 tons. That was amazing. So, and then in 1988, our president was saying Soviet Union is the evil empire. We must destroy it. And we in Burlington said, maybe, but let's get to know those people. And so we've established a relationship with Yaroslavl, beautiful city on the banks of the Volga River, and I know we have representatives here from the Yaroslavl program. We established that relationship at a time when the Soviet Union was still in existence. In fact, I accompanied Bernie. There was a delegation, I believe 12 of us, to first visit Yaroslavl in 1987. And imagine, I accompanied Bernie to Yaroslavl as part of this delegation, but it was also Bernie's honeymoon. That was 1988. 1988. And then we found ourselves in the early 90s exploring another opportunity. And this opportunity was in the Middle East. And at a time when there was continued strife and turmoil in the Middle East, in the Palestinian territories, specifically, Burlington said, we want to get to know on a personal basis the people of Palestine, and we're going to establish a Palestinian Sister City relationship. And that was in 1991. Those discussions began. And there was not everyone in this community felt that was a good idea. Some said this will result in us being perceived as taking sides. And there was a discussion, a debate that went on for a year. And ultimately it was resolved by saying that we will simultaneously enter into a relationship with an Israeli community, the city of Arad. It hasn't been easy for obvious reasons, some logistical, some that it's a war zone today, but there have been some good results of the Burlington, Bethlehem, Arad Sister City program. So I've been all these three sister cities that I've mentioned, I've been all of them. In fact, I think I've been to each of them at least 5 times, maybe 6 times each. So I know these communities. I've come to understand the people. I've learned a lot. And there's some experiences that just stand out in my mind. I remember visiting Nicaragua in 1990 for the first time. And I'm on a military airplane traveling from Managua to Puerto Cabezas, and they had big benches along the sides of this airplane. Half of the airplane was Sandinista soldiers that had been in the bush for years, returning home. The other half of the airplane were Contras, also returning home. They were coming from the same community, the same village. They knew each other. But obviously the tension on that plane was intense. I'll never forget that day. And they all had guns. They all had guns. And it's asked, are we going to make this? You know, again, I remember the visits early on to the Soviet Union. And we were there to experience the collapse of the Soviet Union and the introduction of democracy to Russia, as rough as it might have been. We experienced that. I remember being in Bethlehem when I got caught in a crossfire of kids throwing stones at Israeli soldiers. It was occupied at the time, and the soldiers shooting back. Rubber bullets, but then it deteriorated, and it was not simply rubber bullets at that point. So these experiences have been profound and meaningful for me, but most important, more important than how I was affected is how thousands of people from Burlington, but also our sister city counterparts, have been affected over the past 40 years through these programs. And I think that we are a stronger city as a result of this. I think that there is an awareness in Burlington about foreign affairs and international relations that does not exist in many communities because of the sister city programs. We took the lessons that we had learned internationally, and after Hurricane Katrina said, let us have a domestic sister city, and we established a relationship with Moss Point, Mississippi, a predominantly African American community on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. And again, that was a very powerful experience, and we supported their revival of that community after the hurricane. So these experiences have changed my life. They motivated me to enter into a profession of international development, where after leaving the mayor's office in 2006, I went to work for a Burlington-based USAID contractor, ARD at the time. It's now part of a larger company called Tetra Tech. And I was able to work around the world designing and implementing democracy and governance projects in developing countries around the world. And that work took me to some interesting places, including Afghanistan, but it also led me to Albania, where I lived for 4.5 years working on building the capacity of local government in Albania. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I firmly believe that the lives of thousands have been enriched as a result of the city, sister city programs. But these are challenging times. It's challenging to keep these programs going forward. A number of them are in war zones. Some of them are in places, Nicaragua comes to mind, that are suffering unheard of political oppression. And some of them are new opportunities, but also new challenges in Ukraine, in Senegal. So I think it's important to not only maintain these relationships, and I'm pleased that you're here, Mayor, because I think that that's a reflection of your interest in Burlington to continue to have municipal foreign policy. But we can't only be content in maintaining these relationships, we must strengthen them. And I think that tonight's discussion will hopefully result in some ideas flowing so that we can better understand some of the history, but more importantly, look forward as to how we can strengthen these relationships. So with that, I turn it back to Eric, and I thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. I don't get the mic too often these days.
Thank you very much, Peter. Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have here our new mayor. I would like us to give her a round of applause to thank her for the honor. There's no sister city without the city of Burlington. So we hope that this gathering will be a bigger one, larger one next year, and then we'll have even people flying from Yaroslavl. I hope they will be able to do that. Who knows? Now let me introduce Sandy Bear, because Sandy Bear has many hats. A lawyer who from 6 a.m. starts calling me about a case that we have to win, otherwise this lady will lose her house, and at 8 a.m. have to tell me that we have to organize this summit. 9 a.m. has tell me that we have to go to see the legislator with the kids from the community here, so that they can know which country they're living in now. Sandy is also an historian. With her, I learned a lot about this country, but also even my own continent. With her, it's the travel around the world, and tonight she's going to give a little historical perspective about the Détente From Below. Détente is, of course, this French word. What would be the equivalent in English?
Détente. Peace.
Peace, yeah, peace.
Or disarmament in
Okay,
a way.
all right.
Because I would like to have a discussion about why I'm so interested and always have been in Détente From Below, which was a real movement in the 80s. And it was a movement that had quite a bit of strength in this country when we were discussing wars in Central America, wars in the Middle East, and continued wars pretty much everywhere. I think even at that time, the United States was always involved in the colonialization of Africa. However, that usually didn't even hit the newsstands, but wars were happening all over the world. At that time, as Eric mentioned, I was an attorney mainly, but I'd always been a teacher as well, and I had the great privilege and honor of becoming a faculty member at a school that tragically no longer exists here, and that was Burlington College. And Irina Medic, a young woman who joined the United States from Bosnia, was one of my students there. So she knows what a special kind of a place it was. And Grant Critchfield here also was a faculty member there. I was a faculty member there for probably 20, 25 years. And I had the great privilege of teaching history and politics and law and women's studies and lots of subjects. I only have a master's degree, which I never would have been allowed to teach anywhere else probably. But I had a great deal too of experience in politics. I'd been a legislator. And so that place was so special, I was allowed to be a faculty member, as well as I was the director of the overseas study program at the University of Havana in Cuba, which Joanne Murad is here, and she was one of our resident directors there with her husband Tim, who was a professor at UVM. So when I was always I always had a huge passion for history. So I studied in college, and was what I went to the University of Wisconsin for. And so at Burlington College, I had a real chance to study history, especially the history of the 20th century, and also to teach it. And that's, of course, the best way to know anything about any subject if you're forced to, or if you have the honor of teaching. And so I had a great deal of time and energy to study particularly the history of the 20th century. I taught other centuries, but it was really the 20th century, my century, which stirred my thought, because what the heck had gone wrong in the 20th century? Because it was a century, as we all know, of world war, continual world war, from almost the beginning of the 1900s until the tragic end. And of course, those wars are now still continuing. And I had a chance to also study the rise of nation states out of great empires. And to see that those nation states, for instance, France, England, Germany, Italy, they were nation states that had been formed on the notion of who had been born where and what that community was. For instance, the German community became Germany versus an empire of many different people. But Germany, with all of its borders, became Germany. France did, England did, but many other places did not. For instance, there was the Russian Empire or the Ottoman Empire. But these nation states, out of the origins in the capitalist system, were nations that were primarily located in Europe and among the white nations in particular. And those nations were built, had borders, passports, frontiers, border crossings, checkpoints. And those nations, it seemed to me, had been based on continual war between elites, between elite classes, particular and alliances of those states. One nation state of alliances versus the other alliance. And what they were all attempting to do was rob people's resources and to have those resources in the hands of whatever elite was ruling those nations. Now, other empires, of course, were always at war with each other too. But the rise of the nation states built on borders, built on nationalities rather than a common nationality, were really problems, and they were always at war with each other. And those wars only served an elite class, if you think about it. They only served to build a military-industrial complex and to build the profits of war and arms makers. And so I became real interested in kind of the way people under those nation states or within them, but were not part of the elites, could relate to each other. And my question always became, people who know each other, who know their neighbors, really don't usually want to bomb each other. On occasion, of course, they do. If they have, they're mad at each other over something ridiculous usually. But they don't really, once you get to know people, do you really want to bomb them? And I began to think about ways that people could have face-to-face contact with the peoples of the world that maybe our government said should be our enemies. The government said they should be our enemies, but do people really think of each other as enemies automatically? Not if they know each other. That's something I think we should discuss, but that became obvious to me, that people who know each other face to face do not want to kill each other necessarily. Sometimes they do, but usually those disputes are more solvable than the kind of disputes that nation states ruled by elites have with each other. And so one of the first things I did was I admired the Sanders administration. I was not a part of that administration. In fact, I opposed it. And sometimes, as Peter said, I ran against him in 1989. But I always respected what they did in this community. And one of the best things I think that they always did was they brought international perspectives into our community that were incredibly valuable and mind-blowing in a way. What other cities were doing that? Not very many. That were asking people to get to know our neighbors, get to know people that our governments had defined as enemies. And the first one that I became not involved with, but that I knew about, but I actually visited it also, was the one in Nicaragua. At that time, I don't know how many of you people remember, but at that time Nicaragua had been, was being governed, I should say it that way, by a group of people called Sandinistas, who were rebels and who had taken that country kind of by surprise and had replaced a dictatorship. The Sandinistas were socialists, more or less, correct, as we all recall. And they were viewed by our national government as enemies, and it formed groups to overthrow the government of Nicaragua, and they were called the Contras. And I really admired Bernie Sanders at the time for saying, hey, we shouldn't be part of this. We should let these people be alone and live out their own dreams of having the government that they wanted. And I remember that that was the first sister city I was aware of. That was the first one we did, right?
Yeah.
And that was one that I was incredibly interested in. And I became interested in the whole idea that people below the national government, people at a grassroots level, have the possibility of making peace with each other. The elites probably never will. But people on the level of face-to-face, people-to-people contact can bring friendship, can bring business. See, I think doing business is a way of actually making friends. Doing business, making friends, sharing culture, all of those things alone can bring peace. The second place that I got involved in because of my passion. I don't know why, but I've always had the passion to visit and to make friends with Cuba. So in 1991, I went to Cuba for the first time in 1981 and became transfixed by its very different kind of society. Problematic society in a lot of ways, but also people who loved us, who were so grateful to North Americans for visiting them, because that was at a time, again, when the United States was busy trying to overthrow the government of Cuba. The government of Cuba is not my government. I don't particularly criticize it. I don't particularly support it. However, I've always supported the people of Cuba and of all of Latin America, And I became aware that I wanted to help the Cuban people, or support them, put it that way, to support the Cuban people in living a more decent life. And what I saw our government doing to the Cubans were boycotts, embargoes, really horrible blockades of Cuba so that they would become immiserated. So in 1991, I formed a group, and Joanne is aware of this, called the Cuban American Friendship Society. And we, in that society, have been doing trips for many years to Cuba, and we will probably do teacher trips and lawyers trips. And in a way, just to show, look, we care about the people of Cuba, and we want to support them and be friends. And we're kind of ashamed at what our government has done to you. I mean, this is a nation essentially of poor people, black people, brown people, and I have no idea why the United States has sought to punish them so badly. Anyway, so that was another group. But I want to stress the idea of, again, once you go to Cuba, once you see people in Havana, you'd never want to hurt them, would you? You know, never. And it just, every time I hear the rhetoric against Cuba, I think, where have these people been, like Marco Rubio and that much? I mean, these are people that we should be friends with. They have a terrific culture, they have terrific art, we could learn so much from them, including a lot about baseball. Anyway, so I had a baseball trip to Cuba a number of years ago. In 1991, and Paul Bakeman is here from another sister city that I was involved with Peter Cabell. In 1991, many of us, I had been in a study group about the Middle East and became firmly convinced that we needed to do something about the continued wars between Israel and their neighbors in Palestine. And as part of that Middle East study group, with Musa Ishaq and a number of Palestinian friends, we resolved to have a sister city in that region. We were the first, and that was really tough to do. The minute we suggested a sister city in Bethlehem, Palestine, kind of the city council went nuts, didn't it? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
And they did. It was hugely controversial. Went on for a very long time. In the end, what happened is that we said that sister city was so that had fostered such a huge discussion that we decided to have a tripartite arrangement, Bethlehem, Palestine, Arad, in Israel, so that both the Israelis and the Palestinians perhaps could even talk to each other through that tripartite arrangement. And that sister city was founded in 1991. And that continues to this day and really has been a vigorous sister city program for a very long time. But anyway, I still believe that once you get to know your neighbors, once you begin to treat other people in other countries as human beings rather than as enemies, and that can only happen, it seems to me, through face-to-face contact with people. I still believe in this kind of peace building from below, even sometimes out of the sight of those people in power, people-to-people contact, make friends anytime you can. It's a good idea. Cuba was the most difficult to do because of no, it wasn't, I shouldn't say that, it wasn't the most difficult. But it was difficult to do given real hostility of the U.S. government. That had to be really done very carefully and legally. But also the one in Bethlehem was very tricky also and difficult. But I can't stress enough, and I'm so happy that the mayor is here tonight because I know her family, I know her a little, I wish I knew her better, but I know their interest also in international affairs, in international, how I would put it, solidarity with the peoples of the world. And I'm so happy to see us here today. And I tried to do the summit with this in mind, that it's time to reinvigorate our sister cities. It's time to do that. The last 12 years, there hasn't been much attention paid to the sister cities. I'm so happy to see Ali here, Dieng, because he is the founder of our most recent sister city, our first one in Africa, correct? In Senegal And also, I'm so happy to see you all here. And again, it's time to get busy to reinvigorate the wonderful program of the sister cities throughout the world. Thank you.
Okay, now Sandy, if you don't mind, we would like to hear a little bit from the mayor who is visiting us. A little word. Maybe she can tell us, how she plans to bring more.
From a leader.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
After the mayor, we'll have our discussion. So, Madame le Maire, see, I have to. Yes, I have to
This is the job of the mayor. You should jump in.
Say something.
And someone's AirPods
Yes, okay.
So I actually appreciate being able to jump in because I'm doing double duty with downstairs at the MPA, which I'm going to head to in a few minutes. And I ran into Ali and I was like, I couldn't be in two places at once, but I had about half an hour and I wanted to come up. And one of the things that is clear, and I really appreciate, Sandy, your final comments, because as you do a transition from any administration, there's only so much you can piece together about why certain things seem to have been put on the back shelf, fallen off the shelf, versus other things that are put in the front of the shelf, if you will. And so I appreciate that perspective because it has been a little bit of a mystery about the health and well-being of our sister cities, and knowing that we've just established a new one and the importance of that, of course. And even just being here for these first 30 minutes and understanding the intentional, and I emphasize the intentionality there in the 80s in particular, around the counterweight and how important that is on a grassroots and local level to be a counterweight to whatever is happening on the national level. And to former Mayor Puerto Cabezas around the importance, as we all know, on the eve of what could possibly happen again in November, and how critically important it is to be proactive in that space and really take charge in our own community around making sure that whatever happens on the federal level, and let's also all cross our fingers and organize, of course, to make sure that doesn't happen, but that we don't get pulled into that lake. That there is true that solidarity element that Sandy was mentioning before as well. That is such a critical part to make sure Burlington's on the map and leading with our values and leading with that commitment to peace, to making sure we're modeling that for our young people in this community, because there is such an intersectionality as well around how that, both what our community looks like today and is today, who lives here today, and the international and interconnectedness that we have with so many parts of the world, not even including but beyond our sister cities, of course. I think about our new Afghani folks, folks from the Sudan, other parts, of course, in Bosnia, etc., throughout the whole world that have really made Burlington their home. And so looking forward, I really look forward to making sure that we can continue to bring the sister cities back to the front of the shelf, if you will, and make sure that, frankly, that people remember the history. There was 12 years in the last administration where even, I will admit myself, lost a little bit of the thread about the purpose and significance, and most importantly, honoring our newest city in Senegal, and that important connection, and make sure that is clear not only to our young people, but for everyone who lives here in Burlington. I voted former Mayor Buckus here, who's here as well. It's always nice to be surrounded by former mayors in this wild job.
Former mayor.
And I will
Like six of us
like
here.
six. I think everyone ran for mayor once. All right, and with that, I'm going to slip downstairs, but I look forward to following up further conversations to get further into what does support look like, and even, I was just talking to my wife the other day, how can we even think about modern day sharing of skills? So beyond people and culture and business, it's also infrastructure, know-how, and climate resiliency, and just all the justice-oriented parts that Burlington is known so well about. Like, I think there's such great opportunity there to really do skill share and just community building on the most fundamental level. So more to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame le Maire, Madame Mayor.
Like we said like that.
Yes, I also will remember that Sandy said that business is also a way to create bridges and to bring people together. We have a big asset, which is the communities that are becoming new Americans. Among them, we can, as Peter said also, because he traveled the world through USA programs, Détente, and so on, we can make them ambassadors of our, even Vermont only, you know, they can help sell our cheese. They can sell our technologies. You know, I have friends that come from France just to get the goat cheese with blueberries. I mean, they line up to get those cheese. No, you know, people don't just come here to color or to colorize our community or to diversify only our community. They can be instruments of peace, instruments of, you know, diplomacy. A lot of them, even me, I tried once to have a business in Africa, but I went there as an Ivorian rather than going as an American company. I learned my lesson. Now we can help those people get us in their country. We don't need those big guns because China is in the region, West Africa, you know, predominantly, and Russia is rising there. The US thinks that the response is militarism, showing that we have bigger guns, but it drifts us away from the people. My father wouldn't wear any other shoes but floor-shine shoes. I grew up with a portrait of JFK in my you know, living room. So much so people loved JFK, loved America that JFK was, you know, showing to the world. So much so that even pink eyes epidemic during the mission to Apollo was called now Apollo. If you have pink eyes in Ivory Coast, they say you have Apollo, like the mission that we're doing. So now, all these sister cities are trying to get back to you know, to business. Peter now will conduct that discussion among us, you know, see how, you know, we can learn from what we did since the inception of this movement, and then what is next, how we can do better, especially in Africa. Thank you, Ali Dieng, for bringing TS. Thank you so much. It's just 6 hours from here by jet, so hopefully we'll be, yeah, Cindy? Oh, it started already, so let's go.
I just wanted to have Ali say a few words about our newest sister city, if you would. You want to do that?
Sure. I will post it online.
What? Sure.
Yeah,
Good?
yeah, good.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ali. I used to be a city councilor for
Down a little bit, so wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, city councilor for 7 years, and I also have been a candidate for mayor. I all of these people. Yeah, I also want to recognize the presence of Mayor Hopkins who is here.
Right.
And I think when I first moved here, I didn't like Burlington. Just, yeah, but I just grew up and liked it. And I remember it was Green Up Day. That's when I went and met the mayor at City Hall Park near the waterfront. We were cleaning up. I was an AmeriCorps member, just doing service. Completely new. My English was not even good. It's still not good, but it's better now. Now, and I think we need to think globally and try to act at a local level, right? And I think Burlington has become the state of Vermont, a settlement state since the 80s, right? Where we had a lot of people from Laos, all over the world settling in this great state. And just that is such an opportunity that I don't believe that Burlingtonians or Vermonters are tapping into it. It's not like people who are living here just need help and support services. No, they have so much to offer, so much perception about life, so much culture, like so much way of doing things that I believe that students and young people, I mean, people from all generations to learn, and how do we facilitate that at that level as well? Because it doesn't exist, right? And I think in the political realm, it will be also very important for people to understand that we should not be enemies. It doesn't matter where we come from or where we live. We should not be enemies. I think our enemies should be the aliens, but not us humans, right? All of that I heard in terms of wars, in terms of guns, is completely wrong. I think we have one big issue, which is climate change, and it doesn't matter what we do best here. But if we do well here and somewhere else in Africa or in Europe or Asia is not doing well, we are not making any progress, because the threat is not only for one specific community, but the threat is for every single one of us. Our humanity is so important. Reason why these Sister City programs are so important. They are important in so many different levels. Because in order for you to live a life filled with this joy and happiness, most of you have traveled, most of you have went and seen how the way of life of doing things. And how people are sometimes living with almost nothing, but they still happy. They still have joy. They still have a sense of sharing, right? But when I moved here, that became very apparent and very clear to me that the way of living here is almost just mine, my home, my car, right? My. And if you pay attention as an educator, you teach that to kids at a very young age and you don't even pay attention. Compared to my experience as an African, I thought that there is an opportunity to cross the cultures and to cross people to understand what other way, what is beautiful from this country or from these people that I can try to learn and also grow. What can they learn from me in order for them also to grow, right? I'm glad to hear all the historical perspective here, but it will be also very important to know that the way in which we create the Sister City program, Barbara Chantra here from the library has played an integral role in terms of understanding of how to do things. Sandy Bear, Sampling, Mayor Peter Clavel, the historical perspective, they gave me the hope and the courage to say, okay, Ali, you will be doing something, but this time it's not between Israel and Palestine, but this time it is to bring people together. This time it's to bring something new. Burlington has never had a Sister City program with any African country. It doesn't exist. And for the first time, we now have it. We based it on the military partnership, that the Vermont National Guard has with the state of Senegal. And the military partnership existed since 2008. It's now 15 years, strong partnership. Many Senegalese military or firefighters are coming here to be trained, right? To be given some equipment, and the soldiers from the Vermont National Guard are going to Senegal and helping people in the hospital, helping doctors, helping them with equipment, helping them with so many different things, right? And I think that's so beautiful. Military is coming together, but this time it's not about wars, but this time it's about partnership. They even call it military partnership. The Vermont National Guard, I think we also need to recognize the beautiful work that Chief General Knight is also doing in terms of one legislation at the state level called S30. You can look it up. It's called S30. That resolution, that legislation is trying for Vermont to have a state partnership with 4 different countries around the world. And we are all testifying in order for those countries to include Senegal, to include the other countries in Macedonia, for example, right? To include all the many different. And I think that is an opportunity of a lifetime. What African people can do is not to give a lot of dollars, but it is to give a lot of culture. It is to give a lot of ways of understanding of raising children and also being an active member of combating climate change from the perspective of what Burlington is doing, and Burlington, we can say, is leading the nation, is leading many parts of the world in terms of climate change mitigation. Opportunities are so well thought out. And also the sister city, the exchanges that the Vermont Council on World Affairs, I think you were part of it too, are ways in which we need to strengthen and do more. Iraqi's children are right here, right now, in the state of Vermont, looking for places in which they can stay, right? And I think from the city's perspective, if I stayed as a city councilor, it would be one thing. The Parks, Arts and Culture Committee need to be changed a little bit and add the sister city component, where all sister cities will come and provide the dates and talk about their programming and talk about opportunities that we have. It's not only about them coming here, but it's also about Americans from time to time to be visiting their sister cities, states, right, sit around them in order to learn and grow. What is also an opportunity is our students, the Burlington School District, Burlington High School, or even South Burlington and Milton, all the high schools around the state, in order for them to go and visit and have these exchanges. I think it will be beautiful. The city of Burlington also is providing, as part of their budget, maybe $2,000 for sister city programming. It does not necessarily do a lot, but we have many people who are ready to help the city to strengthen this program, such as the Palmer family, such as many other, in order for these exchanges to be real, to be strengthened, to be beautiful, and to bring people together for peace, right? For peace. I'm going to end by just saying what Eric just said. At a global level, Africa right now is being watched very closely. There is this race between America, between Russia, and between China. If you go to Senegal right now, everything being built right now, right there, is by the Chinese people. They're building stadiums, they're building bridges, they're building schools, they're building roads, they're building a lot of stuff in order to make a better cooperation with the African people. What people don't know is America is losing a battle right there in West Africa. It's today that I heard that what they're interested about is just the military. They just built a new base in Ivory Coast. It's just today. And I think, what if it was a bridge? What if it was climate change mitigation? What if it was more education opportunities for young people, for the generations to come, the tech, the STEM, right? I think the focus is there, and each and every single one of us in here, we need to try to change the perspective so that we shift the way we're thinking about connections to not be arms, but to just be about love and peace and prosperity. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Peter,
sure. So I've been asked to moderate, and I'm going to take a few liberties. One is I'm going to ask everyone here to introduce yourself, but also if you have an affiliation with a particular sister city program, I'd like you to identify that affiliation. Steve.
I'm Steve Goodkind. I was the city engineer and public work director in the city for about 30 years, and I did serve as, I guess we call it, an ambassador in 2012 on the Yaroslavl program. My perspective isn't as someone who founded anything, but I was sort of a cog in the wheel at one time, and I'm glad to share some of that perspective, but I also will give my seat to someone else who has even more knowledge about the program.
We have the leadership of the program here that can fill in with the current, but we'll move to that after we have introductions. So,
I'm Grant Critchfield, in charge of the Young French Department. We're heavily involved in our study abroad program in Nice for many years, and support this whole idea of international exchange very strongly.
I'm Tim Arad. retired professor of UEM, Latin American literature and Spanish. And I want to thank Sandy Baird for having found a second career for my wife after she retired from UEM. The president director of the Burlington College Havana semester program. And I'll let her introduce herself.
Yes.
Yes. So Joanne Murad, and yes, as my husband said, I was very much gratified to say that Sandy chose me to go to Havana with a group of students, and I continued to do it for 6 years. And of course, in doing that, part of it is being able to meet people on a personal level, getting to know what's really going on in the country with the people, not with the government. And it's been an incredible experience. And I think, of course, with all of the sister programs, even though this is not really that, what you do is wonderful, amazing, and so helpful. It's nutritious for people to do this. Thank you, Sandy.
Hi, my name is Armina Medic, and originally I'm from Bosnia. I was Sandy's student at Burlington College, and I support her work 100%, and I just want to see if I could be of any help. So, thank you.
I'm Brian Perkins. I teach folkloric music, and in 1985, I donated a guitar to the Puerto Cabezas program, and I want to know what happened to it. Does it need tuning or strings? Wondering.
I'm Oliver Carling. I am here representing the Burlington Yaroslavl Sister Cities program. I'm currently serving as president. I've been involved with the program since 2017. I work for the Middlebury language schools, but I grew up in Burlington and went to UVM. That's where I started studying Russian about the time that the Sister City program was launched. So '89, I took my first Russian course, and so we are one of those programs that is in a kind of dormant status, but we're our board. I'm here with our two fellow board members, and we continue to meet and talk about plans for the future and try to stay in touch with Russian friends there in Yaroslavl.
We're going to invite you up in a minute to.
Oh dear.
So you can say a few more words as
sure.
representative of the program. But
Happy to.
Great.
That's fine.
Barbara?
Barbara?
I'm Barbara Shatera. I'm on the board of the Yaroslavl Sister City. I traveled there twice and hosted a couple tours here of librarians and some other people. And I've been involved with that Sister City since around 2007. And I have a tangential involvement with the Honfleur Sister City.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm Paul Bakeman. I'm with the Burlington Bethlehem Arad Sister City program. I'm serving as a secretary on the board now. I'm not a good secretary, but I'm serving there anyway. And our sister city has been very active, I would say, over the years. And until the onset of COVID, we had exchanges back and forth, mostly from Palestine to Burlington. We've had art exhibits and various activities as well that we sponsored. And we also sponsored.
Save some of that. I'm going to invite you up here as well, and I think we'll
okay, you don't need to.
We'll be able to better record it if you're here.
Okay. Come on.
So Paul, I'm going to ask you each to take a seat.
Okay.
Come on, sit.
Okay.
You got yourself into it.
Yeah.
We don't need a lengthy presentation, but I think just a few more words on the current status of activities. Sure.
Yeah.
Of the program that you represent, and also if you'd like to highlight some of the lessons learned, as well as the challenges that you face. Just take about 3 minutes and give us a brief update on your program.
Well, like I said, prior to the COVID, we were able to do that. Since the COVID, our activities have been restricted, first because you couldn't exchange people, you couldn't travel, and then since the hostilities broke out in the area, people aren't allowed to travel. So it's been more just contact, and we support some programs. At a recent meeting, we voted to fund a student in a school because the schools in Bethlehem have lost their income. Bethlehem's income is predominantly tourism. 80% of it is tourism, and there is no tourism in Bethlehem. So they're facing some very difficult problems in the West Bank.
But could I make an announcement vis-a-vis that?
Yes.
Because we learned on Sunday that a minister, Peter Cook, who was formerly at the College Street Congregational Church, is leading a group to Bethlehem in September, which is going to be incredibly educational about the state of those two countries, but primarily it's going to be touring Palestine. But that's available and it's open to the public. And Musa Isaac, who is the president still of the Burlington Bethlehem Arad Sister City program, says to me that it will be safe because it must be that the government of Israel supports this trip. So it's open to the public. If anybody's interested, please let one of us know.
And last summer we had a visitor from Israel coming to give us a presentation as well.
Yeah.
And his daughters went to a circus.
Circus?
Yeah. Yes. He was able to bring his family with him.
So again, my name is Oliver, and you've heard a little bit about the history of the Sister City relationship with Yaroslavl. I became involved in 2017. I was able to travel with a delegation in 2018 to celebrate 30 years of cooperation, partnership, exchange, all kinds of exchanges, from jazz musicians to hockey teams to librarians, nurses, many different kinds of exchanges, small business owners. And our last in-person exchange was to bring a team of amateur hockey players to Burlington in 2020 in February to participate in the pond hockey tournament. And then shortly after that, of course, the pandemic started. And we tried to do some things during the pandemic online. So we organized a meeting of high school students in Yaroslavl. Yaroslavl is a much larger city. It has the population of Yaroslavl is similar to the population of Vermont as a whole. So there are many high schools in Yaroslavl, and so we had this sort of online event for high school students on both sides to meet each other and have a discussion mainly about how the pandemic was affecting their lives and their plans for the future, how they were spending time. And another thing we did online was a festival that had been in person in Yaroslavl called the Bridge Over the Ocean Festival. We did that online in, I think it was December 2021 maybe. And I think it was reasonably successful. It involved people from both sides, musicians from both sides, a conference that took place with participants on both sides. So then came the invasion of Ukraine. And we put out a statement with the mayor's office condemning the invasion, at that time, Sister City official ties between the city governments of Yaroslavl and Burlington were cut off. That did not mean that we had to stop talking with our friends in Yaroslavl. We're a nonprofit organization like some of the other Sister City programs. And we had a sister city, we had a kind of sister organization, another nonprofit in Yaroslavl. But I think it's been very difficult for them to operate. It's dangerous for people to have ties, with the United States right now, and we've tried to be respectful of that. And it's one reason why it's been hard to even organize online events, since we don't want to put people in a situation, people in Yaroslavl, we don't want to put them in any kind of danger. So we continue to meet and talk about ideas, things we can do in the meantime while we wait for a time when we can sort of start organizing exchanges again. We're excited about the new Sister City programs. We're excited about the program in Senegal. What is the name of the city in Senegal?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. We're really excited also about the Sister City relationship with Ukraine. We understand that a delegation traveled there on January 24th. I'm not sure if they're back yet, but we have invited Colin, who's part of that. And he's expressed interest in this as well. We've invited him to meet with us and just talk about how the trip went.
June 24th. You said January?
What did I say? Yes, June 24th. Yeah. Sorry. Correct. January 24th. That would have been right. So I'm not sure if they're back yet, but June 24th. So. He's so first of all, just a little bit of background about our relationship with Colin and another member of the delegation, Adam. They were both part of that 2018 trip to Yaroslavl, so we have that sort of background, that connection with each other. And Colin said he's interested in learning how we've organized exchanges in the past and whether there's some sharing that can happen there. And of course, I have broader interests in the post-Soviet countries, and I'm really interested in Ukraine, so I really would love to hear about it. So, lessons learned. I guess one lesson is it's a challenge to maintain interest in these programs. It's a challenge. We found, for example, taking the example of the high school student exchange, there was tremendous interest on the Yaroslavl side, and there were all these English teachers who were, excited to sign up their students to talk with students on this side. And on this side, it was quite a challenge to find any students who would be willing to, just to sign in on Saturday. And so luckily, we did have some who showed up, and we had a teacher from Burlington High School who, made sure his students showed up. So that was great. But we have found there is a lot of interest in Yaroslavl, and but always, as we all know, I think, to remind our fellow Burlington area residents, these programs still exist, and to keep that interest going is something we all have to work on.
So I'll open it up for discussion, but just to round it out and for a matter of record, the city council, at the time that they established the formal relationship with Cities in Senegal, also established this relationship with, you have the pronunciation? I think it's Kolinak, something like that. It's a city adjacent to Odessa. And again, instrumental in creating that relationship were Colin Hilliard and Adam Roof. Adam was a former city councilor in Burlington. Adam, at least at this moment, is living in Massachusetts. He took on a job with the Massachusetts Democratic Party, so he has been not as present in Burlington, but he continues to be active in this program. And again, there was a delegation of at least, I believe, 4 people that were in Ukraine just a week ago. And there was a story, if you're interested, on WCAX TV that you can go into the archives, and it's a good description of some of the plans for that program.
When was this?
Just last week.
Last week.
Yeah. I should also acknowledge Honfleur was mentioned, but
Yes,
this is one of our newer programs. Honfleur is the hometown of Samuel D. Champlain, or at least the place that he departed on many of his adventures, including the one that resulted in the discovery of Lake Champlain. But I had a chance to visit Honfleur 2 years ago, and it's a fabulous city. It's a beautiful city in Normandy, and the hospitality of the folks was remarkable. And it's probably at this moment the most active Sister City program. I don't know, is there anybody here who's involved in that program that could?
I did contact Elise Verno, who was used to be the director of that program, and she responded that it was still active, but she didn't ever say if she was going to come tonight.
Okay.
But it's a very important sister city because it's with France, who, remember, helped the United States win its independence from England.
Right.
A sister republic.
And then lastly, Puerto Cabezas, Nicaragua, I mentioned it, and others have as well. It's also called the Bilwi. That's the locals call it the Bilwi. That's the indigenous name for it. And Dan Higgins, who was hoping would be here this evening, continues to be the president of the Sister City program. They have a board that meets at least on an annual basis. I'm on that board, so I know a little bit about what's going on with that program. But I would say right now it's largely dormant, in part because the government of Nicaragua has placed very serious restrictions on communications that might have a political content, and so that they're really putting the lid on anything that might be viewed as being not supportive of the government. And they have actually adopted a law recently that makes it illegal for foreign-related nonprofits to function in the country. So it's an interesting situation that at a time of political oppression, I think our friends in Nicaragua could use support in communication, but it's very difficult in the same way as Yaroslavl for people to travel, to openly communicate, and but I know that that Dan is willing. This program exists today because of Dan Higgins, retired professor from the University of Vermont, but he is looking to pass the baton on, and there's no one yet who's willing to receive that baton. So this is, I think, one of the problems that many of the Sister City programs are suffering with. Many of the active participants have been involved for 30 or 40 years, and there doesn't seem to be a cadre of new, younger people that are willing to be engaged. So that's one of the challenges that's being faced. So at this point, I'd like to open this up for a discussion. I'd like to hear some ideas as to what might be done to rejuvenate the interest. On one hand, we talked about the importance of Sister City programs and citizen diplomacy. On the other hand, we talked about how many of the programs are not particularly active at this moment, and some could be called dormant. The fact that there are 2 new programs that are being launched in Ukraine and Senegal, I think that's a suggestion that there is an interest and there's a recognition of the importance of this form of diplomacy. But what can be done to re-energize, to rejuvenate the Sister City programs broadly? Sandy?
Yeah, I want to commend the Yaroslavl program in particular for keeping up, because I was fairly shocked that because of this war, it was the suggestion that we cut off Russia. After all, it's because of war that we have to make peace. And so I really commend the people, and you in particular, the leaders of the Yaroslavl program, for not allowing Russia to be cut off. They are, after all, still people. They're people who helped us a great deal in World War II, and so I'm very happy that that relationship did not die. But one thing is what I'm going to suggest is to keep on going. I don't know exactly how to do that, but I know that it's probably one of the most important movements throughout our country. I think also COVID had a lot to do with cutting off all personal relationships.
Right.
And so I think, especially with our new mayor, who has a great deal of history and international solidarity, that there's a real chance to reinvigorate these programs.
But at the moment,
Yeah.
the city's position has been to suspend formal relationships with Yaroslavl, right?
Well,
But the nonprofit organization, the 501c3, the Yaroslavl Sister City program, continues to be active.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we just have to have a good talk with the mayor about reestablishing that, I think.
You know, one of the very active, going back to Puerto Cabezas just for a moment, I should point out, 4 years ago now, they had back-to-back hurricanes.
Yeah.
There was massive destruction in the area, but the Sister City program launched a fundraising campaign, and we raised, I think, around $15,000, which then was invested in community rebuilding in Puerto Cabezas. Some of it going directly to nonprofit organizations that were rebuilding facilities and homes as well.
I would love,
You mentioned that the WCAX had a program about.
Well, it was featured on their news. So if you go to the CAX website, you'll find it there.
Okay.
Or if you Google Burlington, Ukraine, Sister City, it'll pop up. It was a good story.
I certainly wouldn't know how to do it, but how do we publicize the sister cities?
Yeah.
I think that's important.
We don't do it very well, that's for sure.
Well, we haven't for the past 12 years,
Yeah.
especially during COVID. But there's a real chance, I think, to reinvigorate them. What do you think, Ali?
I mean, a couple of things come to mind, and I think first and foremost, the Parks, Arts and Culture Committee need to involve now the Sister City component.
Yeah.
Because that's the closest thing. And I remember I created the Racial Equity and Inclusion Committee for the City of Burlington, and I think we can just do it through a resolution that I can draft, maybe send it to you for review, and then identify a city councilor who can bring it to the city council to say now the Parks, Arts and Culture Committee is officially now the Parks, Arts and Culture Committee and Sister City Committee. We add that element into it as a standing committee of the city council. That's one thing, and I can draft it, and then we find someone. And I think two, that same resolution can also involve any sister city committee, any sister cities, right, that state, for example, Senegal, for example, Ukraine, so for example, all of it, their flags, the flags of those countries need to be at our airport. Somewhere in our airports where it's listed, okay, these are the sister cities of the city of Burlington, and we have a place, a designated place where it's there. So anyone who would know that these, are sister city countries. I think that's one thing also that we can do. And I think the third element, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
Each representative of a sister city, at least on a bi-monthly basis, we need to come together again to talk about challenges, opportunities, and things like that. I think it would be imperative.
Mm-hmm.
Those are three things concrete that we can do.
I also think like in City Hall we display art representing other countries' art, especially Sister City. It would be really great for people who are coming in to educate themselves as well, to know that there's a sister city and this is the art from their country.
In City Hall.
Yeah. I'd love to see it. I really like what you're saying. That's what I've kind of wished we had been for a long time, because the sister cities, as long as I've been involved, have been kind of siloed. You know, they're all doing their own thing, and I think it's really important to have us as a group. We are a group. It'd be great to have like a board. You know, representatives from each.
Yes.
Yeah, to keep, because it's. And especially like you were talking about climate change earlier, you know, that's a global thing. You know, there are things that are going to map over to all of these different relationships. And I think having sort of a more coordinated approach would be better.
What about a festival of the sister cities where you would have food and in the spring maybe? No, music maybe?
Yeah.
Is there a web page? Huh?
There is a webpage on the city's website. Some of the individual have websites of their own. I did years ago, I did create one for everyone. It was back in the day of like, you know, early Google, you know, websites, you know, so it doesn't really exist anymore. But yeah, there was an attempt to do that, but there really needs to be like a webmaster who can oversee it.
Yeah, there is. I mean, one simple thing that could be done is there is information on the city's website, but it's very old. It was information that has been there since I was mayor. One of the serious problems that we face in terms of the management of these programs is the coordination.
Yeah.
Like the power and the strength of the sister city programs is with volunteers, you know, citizens who are interested in engaging in citizen diplomacy. And nothing will happen without that interest of individual citizens. But it also requires coordination to get things done. And the city's support, financial support, people should know this, these things are not absorbing a lot of taxpayer money. Each sister city program, and I assume this will be the case of the two new ones as well, gets $2,000 a year. And that's been the level of funding that they've received for the past 35 years. So we're not talking a lot of city investment here, but maybe there's a way that we could better coordinate the programs, and rather than each sister city program, because now there's a total of 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 6 active sister city programs. Could we somehow come up with a mechanism of providing administrative support, logistical support to all of them?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Our sister city does not have a tax exempt status. And are all the sister cities separate? They have separate tax IDs and things like that? Or is it all under the city as a one unit kind of thing?
No.
How are they set
It's
up?
not one unit.
It's definitely not one unit.
Okay.
One unit in Yaroslavl and Puerto Cabezas are structured as separate 501c3s.
That's true for
Yes.
Honfleur as well.
Okay.
For Honfleur as well, right.
But I don't think that's true of Burlington, Bethlehem.
No, we're not.
No, and it's probably not true of it.
We're in the process of setting it up.
You're in the process.
So how are you setting it up?
Through the state.
Okay,
State?
okay. Through your state.
No, the state of Vermont.
The Secretary.
The Secretary
Secretary
of
of State, okay.
Yes, just as a
We're incorporated as a nonprofit, but I don't think we have a federal tax ID.
I see.
I'm not sure of whether we have one or not. You know, we just want to get through that process because I think donations would be a good way to get extra funding for all of this.
But that would require an overarching, and I was going to ask you, is there some overarching structure in
Yeah.
all of them?
There's
No.
not.
There's not, no.
Could one be set up?
Right,
And each program is a subset,
right,
a subsidiary of the overarching 503B or whatever it is,
right.
that would bring coherence
Right.
to all of them.
You know, there's like 500 cities in the United States that have international sister cities. And I've always been a believer in management by plagiarism. Let's figure out what's working in other places and see if there's something that we might borrow in terms of how to better manage these programs. And there is an organization called Sister Cities International, and the city used to be a member of that, and Bob, I don't know if they were.
They're supposed to be a member of it now, but I don't know if they are.
Yeah.
Well, I've been to one meeting of it.
Yeah, well, Musa and Chris went
Yeah,
there
right.
too.
We should.
But I don't know if the city is paying the dues that are required.
That's the point. And
Sister City International.
Sister
right?
City International, and you gotta take a look at that if you're interested in what other communities are doing. And also, you know, wearing my former hat as the board member and past president or chair of the board of Vermont Council on World Affairs, in some areas, the Council on World Affairs plays a role in coordinating, organizing sister city activities. And that's something which we've had some just very preliminary discussions about, and that might be worth considering as well. But I think that more would get done if there was better coordination. I know many years ago, the Puerto Cabezas program had a part-time coordinator on the payroll, and that was a time of great activity.
For all of the sister cities?
No, just Puerto Cabezas. Yeah. So any other thoughts?
I think probably wonderful. The best thing would be to have a coordinating committee,
right?
At least of all of us. That would consist of people right here. How often, so that we could keep up to date with you. I think that first of all, I think we should approach the mayor to reinvigorate all of the sister city programs, and clearly she's interested.
Right.
In terms of international even solidarity.
Right.
So maybe that's one of the first things that we should do, is make sure that the mayor is aware of this meeting and is aware of our intent anyway to keep the programs going. See what she thinks, right?
And make contact.
Yeah, make contact with her.
Mayors of our sister cities.
Yes,
Just to
right.
reiterate
Right.
a relationship.
I think she'd do it, don't you?
I would hope so.
Yeah. So why can't we do that as a first step? Make a plan to visit her, to request a meeting with her, to talk about what might we do to restart this. Because truly, they haven't been terrible. I guess Yaroslavl has been, right?
Yeah.
Good for you.
I would loop in the city council as well.
What?
City council as well. Loop in city council as well as the mayor. Because they'll have to work in coordination.
Do we do travels to those countries?
We have, Peter and I traveled to Israel and Palestine.
And the travel that has occurred is privately funded.
Yeah.
Even as mayor, when I travel to these cities, I
paid your own way.
I paid my own way. One that, $2,000 not going to take you very far. But that's again one of the challenges that you you face, you don't want to leave participation in the Sister City programs as being a privilege that only those that have personal wealth can participate in.
But those people with personal wealth can give scholarships
Yes.
to others, right?
But, and there ought to be some strategizing around
Exactly.
fundraising.
I think that's why the tax exempt status is important.
Yeah.
But
They get donations from, individuals and companies, etc.
And raise money, raise the
But
funds.
that would require an overarching.
I spoke to Don Higgins. He said that the Nicaragua one was so defunct that he wasn't going to ask for a budget. I said, Dan, get the damn budget, and think about ways to fuel that into all of the Sister City programs. But isn't the first step to have some kind of a coordinated committee?
But then decide if they want to. They would have to start a second organization. Basically, that's an agglomeration organization.
It would seem to me also the first step would be getting a committee to go talk to the mayor. I mean, I'm always interested in first steps so that the movement won't die.
And there's also a responsibility on the part of the individual Sister City programs to communicate to the city.
Yes.
Puerto Cabezas, we issue an annual report. This is what we've done in the past year, this is what we plan to do in the future. And I understand through discussions with the mayor's office that not every program is doing that.
We do.
So if you're involved in a program that is not reporting to the city, you should do so.
I think that ours did though. Ours used to do that.
Ours does do that.
Yeah, that's what I thought,
We haven't got one for this year because it's not over with yet. We got one from last year.
Right. But anyway, so is there an agreement anyway to have some sort of a coordinated committee? I don't know, other than having the next meeting and planning to go see the mayor as soon as she's available.
Right.
What do you think?
I would think that, I think each in VICII,
VICII, Vermont Institute. And the reason that those words were chosen was because it's the original name of Burlington College.
Right.
Yeah.
But if VICII was willing to organize that, I think for VICII to reach out to the individual Sister City programs.
Are you willing to do that? I'll do it with you.
I'm believing that the number is 6 now.
Do we have a sign-in sheet? With everybody's phone number, we probably should have, right?
Would be great.
Okay, I'll go get it. I'll do this.
Is there one for Japan?
I think there was thoughts of it, but in others, I don't think we have one. We don't have one in Asia.
Okay.
There have been a number of other international initiatives that are not Sister City programs per se. And for years there was an exchanges between Burlington and Nishionima, Japan, focused on environmental education. So it was very, very focused. At one time there was some funding for that program. There have also been Sister Lake programs.
Yeah.
In
Macedonia, right?
There was an exchange back in the mid-'80s between Lake Champlain, those responsible for the management of Lake Champlain, with Lake Okrit, which is bound by Macedonia and Albania. That was I visited that region in 1995 for the first time under that program. And also there was a relationship between an Indonesian lake and Lake Champlain, Lake Toba. So there was quite an array of programs. The Sister City programs have been central, but there's been others as well.
Yeah.
But I think one of the greatest challenges that we face is how do you market the Sister City program? How do you make the community aware that these programs exist? And how do you develop strategies of engaging new people in these exchanges? And if we don't bring in new people, these programs
Yeah.
will not survive. And I think that there are some lessons to be learned. You know, Honfleur is the most active program now. Why? What are they doing? Yeah.
You can go there.
Yes.
That's the big
And
thing.
there's not a war yet.
Right.
Well, what about
But
the
there's
school
no-
system as well? We need to teach our youth about that.
Right.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Some schools have sister school relationships. We were learning that Stephen on our board, who teaches at U32,
Yeah.
they've started a sister school relationship with a high school in Nepal, for example. So these, anyway,
Yeah.
just thinking about schools. But yeah, I gave an example of how we've tried to involve high school students. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Sister city programs.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is going around if everybody, and so Eric, you and I could take charge of at least trying to get in touch with the mayor and setting up a meeting, and then the whole committee could be invited to go, right? Would that be okay?
And maybe with Valley, we need to go to Africa. Not,
You do the
so maybe
same.
we can organize a trip to Senegal.
Oh, yes.
Would be-
I think that
Yes, I'll sign for it.
Yeah, me too.
All right. I know you.
Yes.
And we'll take
But
up
Ali,
35.
you gotta make sure we won't fly in those F-30 or whatever.
35, yeah.
We go with a normal commercial jet.
Not Boeing, apparently.
No problem.
No Boeing.
All right, lastly, moderator, I'm about ready to
Call it a day.
call it a day, and thank you for coming and adjourn this discussion. But I think it's been a good discussion. But its value will be in the follow-up.
We're gonna talk to the mayor. But I think it's true, trips are really, really important. Right. And we can get other people to go with scholarships, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
And
But Ali, you think you should go to Senegal?
of course.
Yes.
Of course. Yes.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Mayor.